Welcome back to Pave the Way podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Greg Hellback, and today I am with the one and only Donald Ross from good old Orange County, California. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
What's going on, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing? How's the Southern California life treating you?
Hot, man. We need this stuff to cool down a little bit. It's been like 95, 100 at my house for the last couple months.
Oh, man. Isn't that brutal? A couple weeks ago, I'm in San Diego, so I'm like 2 hours south of you. And the humidity in San Diego, like 2.5 weeks ago, it was unbearable, man. I was sweating all day long. My coconut oil, I always do this test. My coconut oil, it's either really, really hard, almost like an ice rink, or you can like shred it, or it's liquid. And it's been liquid for a while. So I need this heat to stop, and I need to get back to, why I'm paying all this money to live in San Diego.
Absolutely, man. I'm flying out to Wisconsin here shortly, and we're going back there to get away from the heat, which is crazy.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it gets hot in the summer there, right? That's where you're from originally?
Yeah. It gets hot and humid, basically end of June to probably end of September. It's not so fun, but the humidity is kind of the part that gets you there. But otherwise, it's, 80, 85, but the humidity is normally what gets you.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. Don is a absolutely high-level real estate investor, CRM expert. So we're going to be talking about all things real estate and CRM on the show today. So, Don, before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of today's show, can you give the listeners a little bit about your background, kind of what you did before you got up to real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. So before my career started, I kind of was in the construction business. We built some large homes. And so by large, I mean, the average for us was about 5,000 square feet. And then the largest that we ever did was going to be 12,000 square foot. I did not finish that one before I left for the Marine Corps. But that being said, that thing had an elevator. It was like 2 stories. The crown molding had crown molding. So I got to see some really cool, new build houses that we did before I left. And then I left for the Marine Corps and did that for 7 years. And that's kind of my systems, processes, and discipline, that came from that, obviously. Part of that life and that career was in supply chain management and then contracting. So that's my background in contract management and the knowledge of that. But I've taken that and then built out kind of platforms behind it and processes and checklists. And it's been from the Marine Corps that all came from.
That's awesome, man. So you're like the opposite of me. Like I'm like, I can do the system thing if I have to. Like I have like my little mini systems I have, but I'm so much more of like a kind of all over the place person. And like, it's always nice to have friends like you who are systems and processes, because I'm like the complete opposite. I get distracted easily. So awesome sharing that. So let's kind of get into right now, we'll start with the first business and then we'll talk about your stuff. So your real estate business, can you share with everyone kind of what your high level real estate business looks like today, what market you're in? Because you're a successful virtual investor like me. You live in you live in Southern Cal, but you don't really invest there. So what does your business look like today? Just kind of the overall operation from soup to nuts, as they say.
Sure. So for me, I started investing virtually, but kind of by myself, finding boots on ground, trying to feel out who was somebody that I could trust, realtors, things like that, that were in Wisconsin while I lived in California that would go on appointments for me. I was doing the marketing, I was taking the phone calls, and then I was setting the appointments, and they would go out and they would go on the appointments for us. And I would get back some feedback from those appointments. And what wound up happening from all that was first deal wound up being actually a lease option in Wisconsin. Made a whopping $4,500, and that was about 4 months into trying to make whatever this real estate thing is. And I did that, and in my time back then, that would have been 2013, 14 timeframe that I wound up making that happen. And then I started actually really figuring out what the wholesale side was and buying cash and selling and things like that. Wound up doing about 5 or 6 on my own, and then just happened to be posting in one of the big Facebook groups that a lot of us are a part of. Saw somebody that was in my market, and she happened to say, "Hey, I'm doing that stuff too. Let's talk and see what we can help each other out with." That wound up being my business partner, Amy, that is now 50-50 partner with me in Pad Home Buyers. And so her and I did probably 5 or 8 deals, so somewhere around there, and then rediscussed, hey, this is working. Let's just open it up and make the LLC under our names and kind of do this together. So at this point, her and I are partners in that. We have a private brokerage that we have the retail side of things as, And then we have some agents that work under that. And then sometimes they're doing the listings, sometimes they're doing the appointments for the investment side of things. But ultimately, that's kind of her thing, our thing that we're doing. And I'm on the technical side, making the platforms and softwares and things like that all happen. And she's more of the operations out there in Wisconsin. And so she kind of runs the day-to-day stuff with the guys that we have out there.
Awesome. So she lives in Wisconsin. She doesn't live in I always forget, because you guys are partners and like I see you guys together, in like Texas. So right. She actually lives in Wisconsin. So that definitely helps, right?
Southern Wisconsin. So southeastern Wisconsin, between the two major markets that we're in, it's about 1.5 million people. We have a third market that we're in that we do some stuff in. Total, you'd be less than 2 million people. Houses that you actually want to go look at and do something with, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1 million. So it's a decent number, but by themselves, there's some smaller markets compared to some of these major metropolitan guys, the Dallases and stuff like that, where they're just massive markets.
Crazy. Yeah, totally. So are you, before we get into some marketing stuff, are you like, what does your overall mix of deals look like? Are you doing wholesale, rehab? I know you're doing some brokerage, but on the actual like flipping houses side or renting, whatever you're doing, what would you say from a percentage standpoint is wholesale versus closing versus rehabs, and just so everyone can really see kind of each market, certain exit strategies are better or worse?
Yeah. As the market shifts and changes, it depends for us. I'll say that. And then being that the weather that Wisconsin has, you're basically from, let's just say October to probably end of February, you're kind of waiting out any type of flips. You really don't want to be the one trying to sell a house when it is negative 20 degrees out and trying to finish up outside work, painting roofs, things like that. So you got to be cognizant of when you're purchasing the stuff that hopefully you're going to be in the spring, summer, and sell before fall, before everybody goes back to school. We kind of just had that here recently where everyone went back to school, and now the market's kind of just stagnant a little bit. Everyone's kind of figuring out what's happening from that. What is the true market now? Is the market going sideways with us, or is it just that everyone went back to school and they're not necessarily buying? For us, spring, summer, we're going to pick up something that maybe is a lipstick. We're not huge in flipping. And my partner has literally said, if she buys something to flip, punch her in the mouth. So she does not like managing the flips. I personally don't like the flips. My background is in it, and I do not like it. I would rather lipstick, paint, do the bare minimums, and throw it up on the MLS. State of Wisconsin, we can actually put stuff on the MLS before purchasing it, as long as it's in the contract. So we've been able to do some of that. Just, you got to be open with the sellers, what's going on, and some of the intentions behind the thing. You certainly don't want stuff showing up on Zillow and MLS, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, what's going on here? You haven't even bought it, and you've got my stuff listed. You've got to be open of what you're planning on doing. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So,
totally awesome.
For us, we try to wholesale a lot of the stuff right now. Now, I will tell you, we are transitioning more to the rental side here in the near future. We've been kind of opening up the nonprofit, working through that stuff, and we'll be stuffing a lot of the stuff into the nonprofit that her and I are board members of. So for us, the owner finance, the sub twos, all that stuff will now start to be something that we're really pushing on here in the near future. Sellers are seeing that they're not able to put stuff on the MLS and get a full price offer in 2 weeks anymore. Now it's sitting for, 2-3 months. Now they're willing to open and entertain some of those offers, and we're seeing a lot more of that now.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate you sharing, that information. And I'm glad we kind of gave the listeners a little bit about kind of like, you've been in the game for a while, the market, the wholesale strategy, the lipstick on a pig is my absolute favorite, assuming your market, everyone listening, there's probably different markets, but that strategy alone, at least in New York where I'm doing it, it's just the best, because you're getting way more money because the MLS is your buyer, and you don't have to deal with as much rehab as you would with a retail flip. And it's like, for some reason right now where we're at in the market, that's like the sweet spot. So that's awesome. So in terms of the marketing side, before we dive into some CRM stuff, what are you guys doing from a marketing perspective? Because that's like the number one thing that everyone reaches out to me about. I'm sure you get reached out to all the time. Oh my God, what are you doing for marketing? I feel like every month there's a new cool thing that everyone's doing, and it confuses a lot of people. I go to these masterminds, we're in the same group, Investor Fuel, and you hear a lot of these people talking about the marketing, and you're like, oh my God, like, why would I ever send mail again? Or why would I text? So what are you guys doing in Wisconsin, and what is actually working for Don and Amy?
So the answer for what we're doing versus somebody that's getting started would be a different answer, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you what we're doing right now is multi-channel. So we are sending direct mail. It still works in the Midwest pretty dang well. There's definitely list and stacking and things like that that make it even better. But nonetheless, if we're sending out mail to certain lists, it performs quite well for us. And it's super simple. I try to keep stuff stupid simple to where, I mean, Google postcards and stuff like that are what we're sending out. I used to back in the day send sequences of 3 postcards, then a letter, then a postcard, and all this nonsense. And I've just gotten away from that. The simple, consistent stuff works. So the mail works for us, first of all. Text messaging, Sherpa is what we use right now. We've got, obviously, the CRM side of things. We got clients that are using Sherpa, using launch control, things like that. But the mass texting really works well for us. And we're simply reaching out, offering to purchase a house. It's important to note we are not offering listing services since we own the brokerage. We're not doing that. We're offering to buy a house. So the texting definitely works really well for us. What I've seen across country, kind of the average, it seems to be about somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000, 3,500 texts. You can usually pull something out of that if you kind of really know what you're doing with the text messaging. And for us, that seems to be about right. We've got some pretty good responses if we send about 800 to 1,000 texts in a week. We're definitely not the biggest text sender ever. I got friends that send 3,000 a day, but that's not us. Yeah. You know, we send about 1,000 a week. And then good old RVM for now is not illegal where we are. So we use ringless voicemail still. And those 3 platforms are enough to bring in what we need to get on appointments. Obviously, being able to convert that stuff to listings on top of a investment side of the house, it opens up the door for us to where we can do a lot of stuff that not everybody can do. And that's enough to keep us busy at this point.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing with the listeners, like, some actual data on, like, how to text 3,500. You know, it's obviously not a tried and true number, but in your market, 3,500 text messages is a realistic, reasonable amount that you should probably be sending to get a deal, right? So I think the problem with a lot of these marketing channels, especially direct mail, because that is like what just crushes new investors, is they have the wrong expectations going into direct mail. They don't have the money for it. They don't have the sales experience for it. They don't know how to do direct response marketing. They send out 500 postcards. They get 0 phone calls, and then they think this doesn't work, but yet they're not doing it correctly. So that's really awesome. So would you say with the texting, you know, I do a little bit of it. I don't do this high volume stuff, which I want to look into now. And I'm really excited. We're going to be at a meeting together as of this recording, the $1 million meeting. And there's some experts there. When I send a text message, for example, my message is very straightforward. It's, hey, my name is Greg. I don't know if I have the right number. This might be out of the blue. I'm looking to buy a house on Main Street. If this is the owner, if you're interested in selling, reply to this. Are you sending something similar to that? Because that for some reason, that message gets me a reasonable response. Like, sure, you're going to get angry people, but I pretty much keep it simple like that. And I get a pretty good response across the board if it's a qualified seller.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the end of the day, the way we try to do is it's, you know, John's stuff, your stuff that we hear you guys talk about. We try to take that and then tweak on it. Make it a little bit different, simply because you're going to get better responses if not everyone is sending the same message, trying to get it through the carriers. But at the end of the day, the damsel in distress, help me type of message is going to get a lot better response than, hey, I'm looking to buy your stuff at 50%, give me your house, right? And unfortunately, some people believe that works. They're very ego driven, and they just think that people are just going to hand over stuff to them. You've got to be out there and willing to solve problems and find out what those problems are, offer a solution to it, and actually give a damn. That's where a lot of people are, you know, I think make a huge difference. The guys and gals that are out there that are simply in it for, I want to make $1 million, versus the guys and girls that are like, hey, I want to actually help these people with their problem and figure out what best helps them. But, you know, of course, you're going to make some money for that as well. But you've got to be able to want to help, willing to help. What does that look like? And if you do that, it'll turn out a lot better than the other way around.
That is gold. I want everyone listening to this show right now to rewind the last 35, 40 seconds of this and listen to this 5 times in a row. That's my challenge to the listeners, because if you take what Don just said and actually apply it, if you're chasing money, you switch your mindset to actually providing value and helping people, and there will be more money coming into your business than you can even think about. Because when you're on the phone with these people, or when your team's on the phone with these people, how do I help this person? How do I solve their problem? And then what's going to happen is that if you realize it's somebody where you can't help them, you're going to disqualify them. And then you're going to be able to help more people because you're not going to be speaking to a bunch of tire kickers. So that mindset alone is absolutely, if you take one thing from this interview, it's take what Don just said and actually apply it and let us know about the results. So Don, I really appreciate that, man. That's super helpful for a lot of our listeners. So I like how we kind of started with the whole lead generation thing right now. So I want to pivot into something that is critical, especially for investors who are looking to scale up and they're not really, because when you're in the brand new stage of their career, it's like, all right, we want to get some deals, we want to get some money. But once you have some marketing systems going out, obviously this, I know this, a lot of our friends know this. The fortune is in the follow-up, right? And the best way to have a strong follow-up is to have a good CRM. And, I just happen to be talking to like the top CRM guy in the freaking country right now. So I'm honored. So why is it critical, or actually, I'm going to rephrase this. Why is a good CRM, why can a good CRM make a huge difference for investors besides the obvious, you're going to make more money, but what are like the 2 or 3 things that if you have a good CRM, since you're a big systems guy, what are the 2 or 3 things that CRM can really make if they work that, CRM to the best of its abilities?
Yeah. Even if you're a 1-2-man show or a full team, when it's tracking the numbers and you're filling in the data and the numbers are being tracked when you click certain buttons like ours does, it no longer becomes an emotional type, holding somebody to the fire because of emotion. It's the numbers don't lie. And if you have a goal number, like we believe in traction, we do the level 10s, the KPIs, scorecards, all that good stuff. If you have a goal number and you don't meet that goal number, I'm no longer just a jerk saying you need to make X, Y, Z. There's a goal number there for a reason. And if you can show data that proves that before you, the numbers were there and we're not just pie in the sky numbers, that becomes something where it's so much easier to manage people and expectations are so much easier. They know what to expect. They're not just willy-nilly out there going to appointments and making offers and then not knowing what they should expect out of their leadership and their team. It makes more of a cohesive unit or a team when they know what to expect. And that system will provide that. So for us, we kind of have an SOP or a daily operations type thing that we show. And each of those different team members, whether it's you by yourself or if you have a full team with leads managers, acquisition, disposition, our CRM is built out where it has different buckets for those different team members. And as long as they're working those different buckets and pushing dates forward and checking off their task and working it how we recommend to work it, it's literally impossible to lose stuff through the cracks. And on top of it, you're going to be consistent. And at the end of the day, consistency is the huge everything that you have to do. And if you can manage to be consistent in follow-up, most of our friends will say that somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% of their deals on a yearly basis come from that follow-up. So, yep. If you don't have the systems to keep you in front of those people and you don't have the systems doing the text and the ring lists and you're calling them, we do that too. We call them every 30 or 40 days and we have the mail going out and all this other stuff to where we're consistently in front of them. Without that, it's not going to be held accountable and you're going to find other things that are in the moment more important and you think they're important, but they're really not in the grand scheme of things. So you've got to hold yourself accountable to where every day I check these views, I make this happen. And if I do this every day, and we normally say at least for a 6-month period, if you can do it for 6 months and stay consistent, you'll never go back the other way.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's what you said about 30 seconds ago, the fortunes in the follow-up is probably the most important thing for a new investor or an investor who wants some serious traction to understand, because the probability of some seller calling and immediately giving you the house, like that's going to happen if you do enough marketing. But you cannot bank on people like that. I learned that the hard way. I'm sure you've learned that the hard way. I think a lot of expectations are kind of off when people begin. But when it comes to actually like making real money, most of, I'm sure your best deals have been in the follow-up through a productive CRM, right? Because your CRM, it's not just like what I'm just trying to like, at the end of the day, like with a good CRM, like with an automated CRM, it takes a lot of the actual like thinking out of it because the system does the work. So as long as the system is operating, efficiently, then all the investor has to do is just pretty much follow his tasks because the computer is where the real value is, right?
Right. And so, the way we built ours, we kept it extremely simple. We have one app that 98% of the time you're spending your time in. It's called Property Leads app. all the seller's information, the property, the appointment, offer, contract, all that information is in that one app. And so you're in that one area most of the time. And by doing it like that, there's no guesswork as to what the last comment was, the last status, what the offer was. You literally just go into one spot. And the nice thing long-term is once you outsource some of that stuff as an owner, you can search the person's name, phone, whatever, find that item, come in there, and you know that if you go to that item, it's going to have the most recent status and anything you're looking for there. If it's not there, it didn't get done. It's that simple, done, not done. And that's kind of a EOS traction thing, done, not done. But I'm a huge proponent of that because in the past, I had built systems that had 4, 5, 6 apps, and you had to bounce from app to app to app to find out kind of where stuff was at.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense when you're trying to have stuff where you can look at one spot, know if it's done or not done. There's no guesswork. And instead of taking 5 minutes to find something, you're in there in 30 seconds and you have an answer.
That's so true. And especially the more leads you get, the more marketing you do, it gets crazy. And then you got transaction coordination, and it's when you're closing, it's a whole nother business. Like there's the marketing business and then there's the actual real estate business. And
right.
We're all really in the marketing. I had Joe McCall on the show earlier today, and he was talking about like, you're in the marketing business, you're not in the real estate business. So that's awesome. So what are some mistakes that a lot of investors make when it comes to getting a CRM? Like what are like the 2 mistakes that you see that really kind of get them in trouble? And at the end of the day, like when I say getting them in trouble, it's really just that they're leaving money on the table because there's money in that database, but maybe they don't know how to properly work that database. So what are like the common things that you see that maybe customers who come to you, who come to the REI Automation Squad or Easy Button REI, like what are some of the mistakes that you see they were making that you can obviously fix, just so some investors could say like, hey, maybe that's kind of me, or maybe that's not me.
Right. So, I mean, as you decide to come into a CRM, a platform like that, you have to think it's data at the end of the day, and garbage in equals garbage out. So if you're not going to put the information in, don't expect that the CRM is going to be able to show you what you need to see and hold you accountable. So there's that. And then there's the whole, once you sign up, I'm going to try it out. If you go in with a mindset of I'm going to try it out, and you're not coming in with a mindset of I'm going to actually get in here and use this thing and do what it says to do, then you've already pretty much set yourself up where you're going to fail or you're going to leave in 2 or 3 months. We tell everybody, if you're not willing to give this thing a try for at least 4 to 6 months, then you're probably not a good fit. So you've got to get in there. You've got to figure out how to use the platform. For part of that, hey, we've got full online training videos to explain that. We do one-on-one calls when we first set you up. And then we do weekly hour-long Q&A screen shares to answer any of their questions. And then there's a private Facebook group. So, I mean, if you're not getting the answers or not asking the questions to get the answers to help you, you got no one to blame but yourself. I mean, we're here to help you. You just got to ask for it. Yeah,
no, that's critical. It's critical. So like in terms of like, I'm trying to think back to like the new investor. So like they're on the fence of getting a CRM. Well, I want to give you like some objections and see like what you hit, like what you would say to these common objections. Because I hear these all the time from people. I want to get a new CRM, but I have all my old leads in my other CRM. It's a pain in the neck to get all that data transferred. Like I'm sure you've heard that about 100 times. What do you say in a situation like that where someone's like, I don't want to like, it's usually the pain of switching CRMs is greater than the pain of learning a new CRM. So what do you say with like an objection like that, where that someone could obviously benefit from upgrading their CRM?
So what we've done is we've basically taken it to where we tell them, hey, add us into whatever you've got right now. If we can get it to where it exports a CSV file, we'll just export it. We import it for them. In the past, we tried to show them videos of how to import the stuff, and it was exactly that. It's a painful process if you're not used to tech and Podio. And so just give us the logins and let us do it for you is the answer, because at the end of the day, we can do it in probably 5-10 minutes, whereas it might take you 2 hours and you're going to be stressed out. It's not worth your stress and your time to do it that way. We just get the logins and run with it. And we've done that with, at this point, we're about 730 members strong. We've probably done a transfer at least 100 times minimum.
Like, and is it a transfer from Podio to Podio, or it's a transfer from like another like a Zoho CRM all the way to your new? Because you guys are based on Podio, right?
We're based on Podio, but we've done all of the above. Basically, if any system has the ability to export, and most of them do, export out into a CSV file, we can take that and then bring it in. And we bring in the information as best as we can, and be able to at least have the basics of seller name, phone, property, and some notes and stuff that you have from your old area, and hopefully a status of what it was as a status in your old spot. We'll bring that in, and then you can start working your stuff. and getting it into the drips and stuff like that once you got into our platform.
Interesting. So in terms of marketing with like a high-end CRM with something like yours, how would an investor, this is almost like a selfish question, how would an investor track their marketing through the CRM instead of having to track it through like spreadsheets and like going through freaking files? Because I'm sure a lot of new investors do that, or just investors in general. They don't have to even be new. And it's a lot of like spending a lot of time like just like finding a call and tracking it. Like, do you have some sort of marketing tracker system like to where you can get a general perspective on campaigns, just so like you can see what numbers are converting or what numbers are shit, et cetera?
Right. Yeah. So we do have what we call campaign tracker.
Yeah.
It's connected up to their CallRail account that they would have, and so as long as they're putting CallRail numbers on their stuff, as the calls come in, it'll automatically come into the system. It'll automatically tag that it came from that phone number, that campaign. And then simply if they're putting in, hey, I spent $2,000, I sent out, 900 postcards or whatever the case may be, it'll start doing the math of, okay, from that, you're at a 4% response rate. You've gotten maybe 4 appointments. Each of those appointments costed you about $500 or whatever the case may be. Because you have those numbers, that allows you to then hold people to the fire if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. You got people going on appointments and maybe not getting their notes in or getting offers out in time, and you're able to show them, hey, it cost me $500 just to send you on this appointment. Do you want to send the stuff out and get some more appointments, or do I need to have somebody else look at going on these appointments? It's not free to send you to these appointments for these sellers.
No, that is, especially in today's competitive market. I mean, my goodness. I mean, every lead is hundreds of dollars. So
right.
That's critical, man. It's critical. And it's like those little things. I think the big takeaway that I got from this is that unless you commit to going all into something like a CRM, whether it's a training, whether it's a marketing campaign, if you don't commit to going all into it, and this is stuff people hear all the time, like, oh, you got to go all in. But like at the end of the day, like it's the real facts. Like if you don't go all into something, if you dabble in things, you're going to get crushed every single time because you don't assign enough value to whatever you're doing. That's why like I'm like, if you listen, it's like say someone listens to a free podcast like this, we're giving people information that if they just apply this, they'll make money. Like, there's no guarantees, but there's a really good chance if you listen to what Don and I are talking about, you're going to make some money. But because this podcast is free, they're going to say, oh, that was a good entertaining show. Greg and Don are nice guys, hopefully. And
right.
They're going to go on and they're going to make their lunch and, great. Maybe some people will actually, apply this, but if they paid, I don't know, $500 to listen to this interview, which would be crazy, but they'd be like, oh my God, I just paid $500. I'm going to take what Don said and what Greg said, and I'm going to do it because, we pay when we pay attention. So, when you mention the fact that if you don't treat it like seriously, people are going to throw it away, and it's all a mindset thing. So, man, it's been a really fun show. I'm really new to the CRM, game. I don't really know much about it. I know you're the expert. So, in starting to wrap this show up now, if we have to leave people with some solid advice, maybe I would say just some solid, I want to keep this kind of systems related. Like if you had to give your best advice in 30 seconds or less to someone on maybe having better systems or keeping track of their numbers or whatever the case is, what would your best advice be if you could just kind of give that out and someone could take that and they can use that and like apply that? Because I always like to kind of end with some tactical takeaway advice that people can take from this show, understand it, implement it, and then, hopefully have success.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for me personally, I would say that I live by the rule of time blocking. If it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. And so if I derail from that, it's my own fault that it didn't get done. And I basically said it wasn't a priority, even though I listed it down that it was. So I've found some good apps, in my opinion, and I'll share a link with you, Greg, and we can get it out there. But a good app where you basically set up your morning routine, you go through it, and then you put your stuff on the calendar, and that's your priority for the day. Part of what it also does for me is at night, I have to answer to it. So it tells me to write out what was my high, what was my low, what did I get done, what didn't I get done, and what was the reason I didn't get it done. And when you have to answer and gut check yourself as to why it didn't get done, it's a wide awakening type thing. That's a good thing, but you got to learn from it and take it. And the next day, hopefully you're not doing the same thing. That huge, time blocking, prioritization thing is huge for me. Being that I've got at this point 4 or 5 companies that I'm dealing with, involved with, without it, and on top of having kids and a family, I'd lose my mind without it. So that's number one. And then number two is the processes, and following them is huge. We've got documented processes and videos of how we use our platform and what we recommend. Follow the process, trust the process. You decide that you want to reinvent the wheel and run off and do your own thing, have at it. But, we've already done this. We've been down this road. We've been doing it for a couple of years at this point, 4 or 5 years. Trust it, run with it. And then if you want to adjust in a year or two, once you've really mastered your craft and you've got team members, then sure. But right out of the gate, just run with what we've got.
Why reinvent the wheel, Don? Why do it?
Everyone seems to think that they got the best idea to change and alter this little thing, but what you don't understand is long run, it winds up affecting 3-4 other things. So just run with the process.
It's so true, especially like the people listening to this, like this business just works every time. Like if you just send the marketing and you track your leads and you track your offers, or if you want to do deals every month, you send more marketing, you make sure you get new leads every day, you audit your leads, you make sure, like, there's a tip for everyone. This is kind of some bonus content, I guess. You got to schedule time. If you're a solopreneur or if you have a small team or whatever, it doesn't matter if you're renting, if you audit every single lead that you make, like let's say you get 30 leads a week, if you can spend an hour going through each of those 30 leads and reflecting on them when you're not in the weeds on like a Tuesday afternoon, if you're like on a Sunday morning or something, you have a cup of coffee and you just say, did I do my best to try to help this person? Was this someone I can help? Was this someone I can't help? If you just do that alone, you'll convert more deals because you'll just literally slow down and you'll miss something that maybe you were in the middle of the weeds on a Tuesday. Oh, I probably could have been better this summer. Let me call them back tomorrow. It's like, if you just do those little things, they add so much to your bottom line. Because let's say you get an extra deal every 2 months from auditing your leads. That's going to result in an extra 15, 20 grand a deal. You just made another 100 grand for the year. So it's like those small things. I think Dan Kennedy said, small hinges swing big doors, or some quote like that. It's so true. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit.
I run through our stuff on a Thursday night, and I have a Friday morning meeting with our leads manager, and we go through any problems, objections, issues that she's had, and we kind of run through the different leads and appointments that she's had. And my partner does the appointment, so she does a past appointment kind of audit of what happened on the appointment, what went wrong, things like that. Those little tweaks can really make you to where if you make mistakes, everybody makes them. Let's learn from them, right?
But let's not make them twice. Like, let's make sure
exactly.
that
exactly.
But we don't do, when we know not to do it, we don't do it again. That's why
don't touch the stove twice.
No, exactly. That's why, like, when I do the trainings, I have VAs or whatever who are on the team, and like we go through it slow. I record it, and I'm like, hey, are you confused about this at all? And they'll either say no, and then I'm okay, great, I'm gonna watch you do this right now, and then they're good. Or they're like, yeah, I totally didn't get that part. So then before I have them do the system and it gets crazy, I'm like, okay, this is exactly what to do. You're not confused anymore. Let's have you do it yourself. Because I think once people can teach it themselves, they can just run with it, and then they learn as they go. So Don, it's been a fun podcast, man. I really appreciate your time. I think you just dropped so much gold. I want people to really re-listen to this and really implement what we're talking about. And then if folks were interested in finding out about your CRM or just connecting with you in general, what would be the best way for them to just get in touch with you or check out the CRM? Because we'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll wind up doing is we'll get you a link off of the Easy Button website, and that'll be on the show notes. And then Facebook, Donald Ross, picture of a lion, Old Faithful. That's my image, and that's the animal that speaks to me. So reach out, send me a message, send a friend request, and we can chat.
Love it. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you look in the back, you can see the lion staring at you. He's got the beast in the background. So Don, thanks so much, man. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.
Cool.